So now we'll take it away with Bob Irving. And welcome, Bob. And we're so glad to have you here with us tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy, and hello from the Southern Comfort Sessions here in Charleston, South Carolina. I'd like to thank you for having me. I actually moved here from Lancaster, PA, and so I often played at the Central PA Blues Society, or the Blues Society of Central PA, I think it is now. But I really appreciate you inviting me to be here. And I have a lot of happy memories of playing there at all the different places. Gotta say, my favorite was the 40 and 8. That was just like an old time juke joint, you know? The other places are a lot more respectable. So I figure, you know, the old timey blues is not respectable. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the history of the blues. So some of you who know me, I go by Chicago Bob, which is a moniker which was given to me by a good friend and mentor in the blues, Jim Phipps, and I just try to live up to it. But it does kind of give it away. My passion is Chicago blues, and we're going to talk a little bit about how that came to be, but I thought it might be interesting to give a little bit of background. And if you don't know, this is the crazy thing. Worlds are colliding because I'm also a teacher, which, you know, you might have seen in Kathy's thing that she sent out. So all of my teacher friends say, "What, you play music?" And all of my music friends say, "What, you're a teacher?" So the worlds are colliding tonight. So I currently teach computer science here in Charleston, South Carolina, but I've taught a lot of stuff, a very long career, which kind of gives away my vintage. And I've taught history and English and all kinds of things, but I've been doing computer science for the last 15 years, if you care, which you probably don't, but that's all right. So I want to talk a little bit about the blues and how I got into it, and I'm wondering how you got into it. Like, what was it you heard that it jolted you, electrified you, whatever it was, and you were like, what is that? Maybe you grew up with it. I don't know. I did not, because I am, as you can see, very white. And I grew up in a very white suburban enclave outside of Philly. There was nothing. And I'm going to give away my age and vintage here a little bit. But I was into, when I was like a teenager, things like The Doors, Jefferson Airplane, Country Joe and the Fish, all those kinds of bands. Loved them. And somehow across my radar came, as this young, you know, adolescent kid in white bread main line, the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. And that was the one that jolted me. And I'm like, what is this? Because it wasn't like anything that I was listening to. I mean, the truth is, you know, you can kind of trace, you know, you can hear some bluesy influences in The Doors, for instance, or other bands, but Butterfield were like straight ahead blues, and Chicago electrified blues at that. And they weren't all white either. They had actually stolen, I don't know if they stole or they borrowed, but they got Howlin' Wolf's rhythm section, his bass player and his drummer, which was the engine that drove the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, because everybody likes to talk about Butterfield and Mike Bloomfield and guitar and all that kind of stuff, but really it was that rhythm section, because they had been schooled by Howlin' Wolf in how the blues should go. But anyway, that's what got my attention. I'm like, what is this? I don't know what it was for you. I mean, answer the question. Maybe it was Stevie Ray Vaughan. Maybe it was Joe Bonamassa. Maybe, you know, I mean, who knows what it was, okay? But whatever it was, somehow it kind of reached out. And that's the way the blues is for those of us who love the blues. It just reaches out and grabs something in you. And my belief is, and it took me a long time to get to this, the deeper you go into the roots of the blues, the history of it, the more you'll appreciate it. For instance, Stevie Ray Vaughan, amazing guitarist, no question about that. But he himself said, I stole every lick I have from Albert King. Every lick. He said, and I don't know what to play, I just play another Albert lick. And he had worldwide success with that. So my thing was, this, the older I get, the more into the blues I get, is I like to go back. So Paul Butterfield, who was he listening to? Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was he listening to? Joe Bonamassa, who's he listening to? Is he listening to Otis Rush? Okay, let's go back and listen to Otis Rush. Let's go back and listen to B.B. King and Albert King and John Lee Hooker and Howlin' Wolf and all those people. And who were Howlin' Wolf and B.B. King listening to? So for me, it's been this kind of series of dives, deep dives, back farther and farther and farther. Because the closer you get to the roots of it all, the richer it is. And I don't know what else to say about that. But anyway, somebody once said, the blues ain't nothing but a good man feeling bad. Which is true. Which I think is why so many of us respond to it. Because everybody has had the blues at one time or another. Maybe it's... your woman or your man done you wrong, lose a job, live in our current national whatever it is, it's going to get you. And the blues is kind of about, it's a good man or woman feeling bad. But, I said, again, let's look back, like, where does this come out of? And the thing that I have learned as I've gone along is that the blues, as we know it, came out of a specific time and place. Okay? A specific time and place, not just kind of anywhere. It didn't start with Paul Butterfield, didn't start with Stevie Ray Vaughan. It started way 100 years before that or more. So where did that come from? And that's kind of what I was trying to dig into and try to find out. I'm going to use my cheat sheet if you don't mind. So, if you Google the blues and the history, they'll say, it started with field hollers by slaves. And then it moved to Chicago and it was electrified. Well, all that's true, but let's back up a little bit and think about this. Like, in other words, what? Slaves and field haulers. What's all that about? And moving to Chicago, what's the historical context of that? And that's kind of what I started to look into. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that tonight. So it is, yes, the blues is about a good man feeling bad, but if you dig even deeper, you're going to find it's even richer than what you thought if you didn't know this, okay? So I'm going to go way back, like to 1550. I used to teach history. Way back, okay? And we're going to talk about the transatlantic slave trade, which in the 1500s was a big deal. European countries were basically raiding the coast of Africa, buying slaves, shipping them, most of them got shipped back across the Atlantic, and then from there over to the New World, as they called it, which is the U.S., Central America, South America, all those places. So in all, from say like 1550 to 1866, which is kind of when it kind of stopped, about 12.5 million people, million with an M, were exported from their homes. So a lot of people think, some people talk about, well, there were all the immigrants that came to North America. The Irish, the potato famine, and they came looking for a new life. And, all that is true. But the difference with Africans was that that wasn't what they were looking for. They were actually sold into slavery, kidnapped, and shipped across the Atlantic. And out of those 12.5 million, at least 1 million died on what they called the Middle Passage. Terrible conditions. with viruses and lack of food. And if you can just imagine, if you're just walking along, somebody snatches you, you don't know their language, they put you in chains, they put you on a ship, you sail out of everything you've ever known, and you don't even know where you're going, but you know it's not good. And that's what happened to 12.5 million people. And a lot of them ended up here in the United States. Entered, one of the biggest slave trade markets is right here in my current hometown, Charleston, South Carolina. If you ever come to Charleston, and lots of people do because it's the #1 tourist destination in the United States, stop in to see the Charleston Slave Museum. I'm guaranteeing you, not a good time, but a very productive time. Okay? So anyway, so they came here and they were put into slavery, which means that they were owned by other people. Slavery is not new in human history. Okay? This wasn't the first time slavery has ever been done. But there's an originality to the American system of slavery, and that is that slavery was made hereditary, which means if you were a slave, all of your children were slaves, and their children were slaves. Now, usually, it's always happened, with the Vikings, the Romans, the Greeks, everybody, if you beat your enemy, you enslaved them, and used them for whatever. But it was not hereditary, and that's what happened in America, was that it created this permanent caste of people who couldn't be free. You could buy your freedom, but that was really tricky. Okay, so anyway, fast forward a little bit, and the population here in South Carolina at the time of the Civil War, the slave population was about 60% of the entire population of the state. More than half. Now, so Civil War, we fight the Civil War. Lincoln, quote unquote, frees the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation, 1863. I'm getting to the blues, trust me, okay? And so things are better, theoretically, for the former enslaved people. However, I'm thinking about those people, those white people who lived in South Carolina, thinking, oh, wait, what? We're now the minority? I don't think that's something we're going to go for. So, long story short, Civil War was followed by Reconstruction, as we called it. How do you welcome these other states back into the Union? What are the ground rules? And that ended up in what we call the Jim Crow era, in which black codes, a separate set of laws, were enacted for black people in the South. So we had, in essence, an American system of apartheid. And they called it separate but equal. But what the Supreme Court ruled on 100 years later, roughly, is that separate is inherently unequal. So anyway, if you were, so what if you were a former slave living in the Delta in Mississippi? How would your life change after World War II? Well, the truth is that most of the former slaves ended up as what they called sharecroppers. And they were people who shared their crops with the former plantation owners and were always in debt, usually, to those people. And so in terms of their everyday lives, they're pretty much the same as they were when they were in slavery. They couldn't leave. They were desperately impoverished and all that kind of stuff. And so as a result, if you also factor in that, the black codes, the Ku Klux Klan, all of that, and the fact that there was economic opportunity in the North starting at the beginning of the 20th century, then you have what we call the Great Migration, when about 6 million people moved from the Deep South to the North. They went to Chicago or Detroit or Cleveland or Philadelphia, New York City, all these northern cities which were industrialized and had jobs. Okay? About 6 million people. The largest migration in American history. And they always talk about that. Well, when people got to Chicago. Well, why did they go to Chicago? Why? Because life in the Delta in Mississippi was intolerable for them. I mean, they were poverty-stricken. They were terrified. All of their rights were severely limited by the black codes. And so they thought, well, let's go to Chicago. And truthfully, at the beginning, they could earn 3 times as much in a factory up north than they could sharecropping in the South. So all the people that we've come to know and love, like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, John Lee Hooker, all these people who were former sharecroppers moved north because they had to get away from the terrible conditions that they were living in, in the Mississippi Delta. Now, they took their music with them. So that rich music, which didn't originate in the Delta in Mississippi. So if you know those of you who are musicians, I don't pretend to be one, but if you know the pentatonic scale, which every blues player, that's your bread and butter. That's what you learn. The pentatonic scale is actually originally from West Africa. If you listen to the music, there are similarities. So, it actually started on a continent that's not even North America. But anyway, so that kind of took root in the Delta. Field hollers is true. The whole idea of call and response. We'll do a little bit of that tonight, which you're used to, but you may not have known where it came from. Those are all traditions that go back to West Africa. And they were done in the slave fields and in, all of that. So they moved to Chicago. Muddy, for instance, moved to Chicago, and all kinds of clubs, bars opened up for people to, all these new people that had moved there, African-American people, had jobs at last, finally. They had to, and they went out for a good time. And what Muddy discovered was, and you listen to his early Muddy Waters, and it's all acoustic, right? It's just him on an acoustic guitar and singing. It's still powerful stuff because it's Muddy Waters. And he's got the voice. And he's got, whatever. But when he got to Chicago, it was noisy because all these crowds are in there in the bars, and it's loud. And so he and others, I can't say he's the first one, had to amplify. They plugged in the guitars, the mics, the harps, and that gave birth to what we know today as Chicago blues sound. It's electrified Delta blues, all right? That's what Paul Butterfield was, by the way. The Butterfield Blues Band was from Chicago, and they used to sneak into these West Side clubs to hear the stuff from the real people that were doing it. And they're like, a sea of African American people and one black person, one white person sitting there because they wanted to get it, and they did. And people helped them out. African American musicians helped them out, taught them all of that kind of stuff, and that kind of helped. And so that's why in 1967 or whatever it was, this white kid outside of Philadelphia on the freaking main line, which is about as white as you're going to get anywhere in America, heard the blues from the Paul Butterfield Blues Band with Howlin' Wolf's bass player and drummer. Because so it came, you can trace it back to Mississippi, back to West Africa, and then finally it kind of gets mainstream, quote unquote, when white, it's like Elvis Presley, right? Elvis Presley didn't do anything that dozens of people were doing in the same songs exactly before him on the Chitlin circuit, which was just for black people, right? But, there was a huge market of white people, and so he was marketed for that, and he had a huge breakthrough. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit of the background of the blues. So my personal approach to all of this is, the more I learned, the more I'd say, I just want to do everything I can to honor that. That's all. I'm not trying to reinvent it. I'm not trying to make it better because I'm actually not convinced that you can improve on it, to be honest. I mean, the early chess record stuff and Delmark and all that, I don't know that you can do better. I mean, you could do it differently and it could sound a little bit more modern, but I'm not sure you could do it better. I guess I don't really think that. So I just try to honor it. And so when I play, my thing is, let's just see what we can do to pay homage to the people that came before me and made it. Now, here's the tricky part. I'm going to back up so that you can see more the guitar. Have a little sip of a liquid. I'm going to turn this so that you can see the guitar a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. So this is the problem. I just don't have it. Woke up this morning, looked around for my shoes. You know by then I got those walking blues. Yes, I woke up this morning, looked round for my shoes. Well, you know by that I got those mean old walking blues. River run to the ocean, ocean run to the sea. Don't find my babe, that be the death of me. River run to the ocean, ocean run to the sea. And I don't find my baby child, be the death of me. This is on the Paul Butterfield Blues Band's first album. I did it a little differently, but Walkin' Blues, that was the one. That's what I'm talking about. And that was on the Paul Butterfield Blues Band's first album, if I recall correctly. I did it a little bit differently, as I said. But that was the one. I heard that and I thought, what the heck is this? And here I am all these years later, trying to carry on the tradition. Just doing my best. Speaking of moving north and getting a job, this song talks about that. Have you ever been mistreated? You know just what I'm talking about. been mistreated. You know just what I'm talking about. I spent 5 long years with that woman. She had the nerve to put me out. I got a job in a steel mill, trucking steel just like a slave. 5 long years I worked there every Friday, brought home my pay. Have you ever been mistreated? You know just what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's one of those wonderful northern jobs, right? I spent 5 long years with that woman. She had the nerve to put me out. Should have learned it a long time ago. Next woman I marry, she's gonna work and bring me the dough. Have you ever been mistreated? You got to know what I'm talking about. You got to know. Well, I spent 5 long years with that woman. She had the nerve. 3 times she had the nerve. 4 times she had the nerve. She had the nerve 7 times. Baby, she had the nerve, yes she did, to put me out. She had the nerve to put me out. Oh, as Muddy would say, what kind of woman is that? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm just looking at the clock. I don't want to run over my time. I think I got time for maybe 2 more. I'm going to do one here. I think that this is just, you know, the blues. There's something about the blues. There's something about the blues. Anything, you know, can give you the blues. This is one of my favorite blues songs of all time about a monkey. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Now, I need your help on this one. Well, me and my babe, we had a falling out. I'm here to tell you what it's all about. She wants to sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey, but that would never ever do. Well, it used to be hers, then she gave it to me. Why she wants to sell him, I just can't see. She wants to sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey, but that would never ever do. Now this is your parts. Audience participation. You ready? Follow me. She wants to sell my monkey. Sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey. Sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey. Sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey. Sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey, but that would never ever do. Can't let that girl out of my sight. I gotta watch her both day and night. She wants to sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey, but that would never ever do. You ready? Your part. She wants to sell my monkey. 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 Sell my monkey, but that would never ever do. No, it would. No, 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 no. Again, she wants to sell my monkey. Sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey. Sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey. Sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey. She wants to sell my monkey, but that would never. She wants to sell my monkey, but that would never. She wants to sell my monkey, but that would never ever do. Never do. You know, all the blues songs about monkeys, that is top of the list for me. All righty.
So we have time for a couple more songs.
A couple more or one more?
Yeah, two more. Yeah, one or two, whatever you want to do.
Well, let's see.
3.
I don't know, 3 more. Well, if trouble was money, oh, you know I'd be a millionaire. Yeah, if trouble was money, people, yeah, I'd be a millionaire. Yeah, I could buy the whole world over. Whoa, no, and I'd have money to spare. Yeah, I had worries all my day. Worries, people. Yeah, I had worries all my days. Yeah, well, times is tough. Yes. Whoa, no, I ain't gonna tell you no lies. My mama used to tell me, oh, she said, son, there'll be days like this. Oh, she did. My mama used to tell me, she said, son, there'll be days like this. Oh, but I want you to be a winner. I don't want you to quit. No, I don't want you to quit. Don't want you to quit. Well, if trouble was money, I'd be a millionaire. Yes, I would. If trouble was money, people. Oh, God knows I'd be a millionaire. I could buy the whole world over. Oh, no. Yeah, and I'd have money to spare. Money to spare. That's the truth, isn't it? And the blues is always the truth. So I'm going to end with one that I traditionally end with. Because the blues, yeah, it's a healer. I'm gonna tell you again, yeah, the blues, it's a healer. Well, I don't know where you're coming from if you ain't got the blues. I'm gonna give you some blues. Well, I don't know where you're coming from if you ain't got the blues. I'm gonna give you some blues. Because the blues, yeah, it's a healer. Gonna tell you again that the blues, yeah, it's a healer. It's a healer. I'd always think back, sweltering hot days in the Mississippi Delta. people picking cotton like their lives depended on it, and it did. They had no choice. They did the best that they could. And you know what? Out of that experience of suffering and wanting to overcome came this magnificent music that we know and love as the blues. They had left the Mississippi Delta. They went north to Chicago, Illinois, Detroit, Michigan, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New York City, Los Angeles, California, Charleston, South Carolina, Central Pennsylvania, yeah, the blues. It's a healer, yes it is. Well, the blues, it's a healer. Well, come here, sit yourself down. I got something for you, and I ain't gonna mess around. Come here, boy, lay across my bed. I got something for you, gonna ease your aching head, because the blues, yeah, yeah, it's a healer. That the blues, it's a healer. It's a healer. It's a healer. Don't you know that I said, yeah, no matter how you felt tonight coming in, you're gonna feel better when you leave. Right. Coming to you from the Southern Comfort Session. Now, if you dig this stuff, I have a weekly Facebook Live, 8 o'clock Sunday evening, called the Southern Comfort Sessions. So you search out me, Bob Irving, Irving, and join us. It's open to the public. Love to see you there. Thank you so much, Kathy and everybody else there at the Blues Society of Central PA. Thank you so much for having me. And good blues to you. Bye-bye now.